Okay, part four. So, in part three, I kind of talked about how I was introduced to Coke, and I met MJ and his group of friends, and kind of the night that was the beginning of the end for me. But I hung out with MJ and his roommates and his friends almost every night, either at my apartment playing old school Nintendo, or we were over at his apartment snorting coke and just hanging out. And it went this way for almost an entire month. But the weekends were pretty much a blur. As soon as the clubs would open, we would get a few eight balls of coke. We would round up a big group of his friends. One of his friends knew a guy who was an owner of one of the clubs, and so we got in as VIPs. Um, one of the nights, got to see one of my favorite DJs perform, DJ Sasha, which was really cool. If I could remember it, I was so coked out of my mind and drunk that I really don't remember it, other than I was there, and it was right after his Air Drawn Dagger album came out, which to this day I'm still a huge fan of. One of my favorite techno albums, I guess you could say. Well, I guess the hip thing now is EDM, but yeah, so club thing, that was just part of my new life, and it was something that, up to that point I'd never experienced anything like that. The chicks, the drinking, the coke, the all night partying, um, from evening, all night, all throughout the night until the crack of dawn. It was just mass amounts of coke, alcohol, partying, and chicks. And I spent about a month doing that, from early September when I met MJ all the way into October. And it was the second week of October when things really came to a head for me, where I started to realize that I was in over my head. It was a Saturday night. We just, MJ and I had just picked up, I think it was three eight balls of Coke. And we started the night out early, um, doing Coke. And we went and picked up some other people, did some more Coke, and then we went and hit the clubs. And it was just another alcohol, Coke fueled night of partying. And by this time, I was starting to run out of money. I was borrowing money against my credit card. I had high credit limits, and I would go to the ATM and I would pull out like $1,000, and then I would buy Coke with it. And then the next time we would go out partying, I would do the same. So I was burning through cash pretty fast, and I started to realize that I was the only person pitching in for the Coke, and Coke isn't cheap. And we'd go to the clubs, and there'd be loud music, there'd be chicks, and drinks would just. I don't ever remember paying for drinks, which is kind of weird. I don't know where the drinks came from, but I got hammered a lot, and but I was the one footing the bill for most of the Coke, if not all of the Coke. So I was burning through money pretty fast, and this particular Saturday night, um, partied extra hard. I think I snorted two full eight balls just myself. I was being extremely stingy with it, and when you're the guy with the Coke, you're everybody's best friend. You're the king, and you have people just begging you for a bump. Chicks willing to do all kinds of things for a little Coke. People were your best friend as long as you had Coke. And since I had the Coke, I was everybody's friend. I felt like a king. Doing the club scene was like the greatest thing for my nerd mind to comprehend, and I couldn't imagine my life any other way. But as time went on, I started to realize how deep I had gotten, and I started to get a little more stingy with my Coke, and people kind of started disappearing. But on this particular Saturday night, hard partying, it was almost 8 a.m. Sunday morning, and I was sitting next to MJ on the couch. We were up in the avenues. Um, I don't know whose house it was. Just some house up there. Just people were passed out all over, and it was just MJ and I awake. And I'm like, dude, my head is pounding. Well, let's head back to our apartments because I had driven and I was MJ's ride. And he's like, well, hey, do you got any more Coke left? I'm like, well, I have enough for me, and I can give you a little bit. And so I did my last little bit. He did the little bump that I gave him. We got in my truck and we started to drive back to our apartment. And I remember as we're on the freeway, we're headed south, my head was just killing me. And I turned to MJ and I'm like, I need to get some aspirin or some Advil or something. I've got like the worst headache. So we got off the freeway, went to this little gas station, little convenience store. I walk to the aisle to grab some Advil, and he goes to the restroom, and I remember grabbing the Advil, and I walk up to the counter, and it was early Sunday morning, so there was nobody around except a cashier, and I remember I put the little bottle of Advil on the counter, and this clerk, she's looking at me, and she says to me, "Are you okay?" And I'm just like, yeah, I'm fine. I just have a really, really bad headache. Will you please ring up this Advil? And she looks at me and she has this just really bizarre look on her face. And she goes, "Really? Are you okay?" And I'm like, what the fuck? Yes, I am fine. And she responds with, "Then why are you bleeding all over the counter?" And I look down and there's this little puddle of blood on the counter, and I reach up and I touch my nose, and blood is just gushing out of my nose like a faucet, just coming out. And I'm just like, holy shit, like I don't know what the fuck was going on. And MJ comes out of the bathroom, sees what's going on, and he kind of freaks out, grabs a bunch of paper towels, like wipes up the counters, like, dude, we gotta fucking go, we gotta go. And I remember I threw $5 down on the counter and grabbed the bottle of Advil, and just, we blazed it back to my apartment. I mean, just made a beeline for my apartment. As soon as I got to my apartment, he went to his apartment, I went into my apartment. He was like, dude, just, get feeling better. And I remember I just felt horrible, and my nose would not stop bleeding. And I hopped in the shower, and I remember standing in this shower, just hot steaming water just on my face, and watching the blood drop down to the white porcelain bathtub, and it would just kind of splatter in the water and then wash down the drain. And I don't know how long I stood in that shower just watching the blood drip. And after a while, I got out of the shower, and I just remember looking at myself in the mirror, and the blood would just kind of drip out of my nose and curl around my mouth onto my chin, and then I would wipe it off, and my nose bled for hours. And I popped some pills and just crashed. And I remember right before my head hit the pillow, I'm like, I am never going to fucking touch Coke ever again. Like, I feel miserable. And this stuff had just consumed my life. And And so I stopped. I stopped doing cocaine for a while, and for a long while I stopped doing cocaine. It was it was quite some time before I ever touched cocaine again. But all these people that hung around me, all these new friends that I had made over the last 5, 6 weeks of hard partying just vanished. I mean, just disappeared. I would see MJ every once in a while. I'd see Barbarella around every once in a while. But I didn't really want to party anymore, especially the coke and the clubbing and the drinking. Just, I knew it had gotten out of control. Like, standing there watching the blood drip out of your face, it tends to give you perspective on shit. If only it would have given me enough perspective to walk away from the entire situation, that would have been ideal. But I'm a fucking moron, and what can I say? So, I would see MJ around, and I would go over to his apartment. We would hang out every once in a while and drink and just, I don't know, just chill. And I remember one night, he was like, oh, hey, Barbarella and I, we've got some Oxycontins. Now, for me, I was no stranger to Oxycontins. Like, I had never taken one before. In the pill world, the Oxycontins were like the unicorn. It was always the pill that you wish you could get, but you could never seem to find. I don't know. That's how it was for me. I don't know how big Oxycontins were back in 2002, but I remember he came over with Barbarella and was like, hey, we've got some OC80s. You got to try this shit. If you like your Percocets and your Lortabs, you're just going to love this shit. It's like, it's all the good stuff without any of the mass amounts of powder and the acetaminophen in it. It's just like the pure opiate. And I remember he crushed up one of these little tiny pills, little green pills, 80 milligrams of OxyContin. And I was like, I remember thinking, there's no fucking way that even a part of that is going to get me high. Because I had crushed pills before, and you crush like a Lortab or a Percocet, you have a big old pile of fucking dust that you have to snort. So a little tiny rail of OC80, I didn't think anything of it, but holy shit, it just blew my socks off. Just the tiniest amount, I was freaking gonzo. So if Coke was bad, Oxys were 1,000 times worse. For me, anyway. Because I had already experienced painkillers to that point in my life. And I really liked them a lot. Like, dangerously so, I liked painkillers. So, being introduced to Oxycontins, the floodgates were opened for me. Like, fuck cocaine. Oxycontins is where it was at. That's what was going through my mind. So I started buying Oxycontins. And that was a whole nother beast for me. And if I thought my life was bad up until that point and out of control with the cocaine, it was about to get much, much worse for me. And if I thought Coke was expensive, holy shit, Oxycontins were much more expensive than Coke was. And I ended up spending far more money on Oxys than I ever did on Coke. And like most painters, they lead you to heroin, which I definitely went that route because it was cheaper. But it looks like I've gone over again. I still am trying to keep these between 10 and 15 minutes. So I'm right at the 15-minute mark. So I'm gonna end part 4 right here. Still a shitload of more stories to come. So awesome. Thank you for listening. And stay tuned for part 5.